Wherever you are, however you may be listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Cardinals on SI podcast. My name is Donnie Druin, joined every week by my main man, Richie Bradshaw. Before we get into the nitty gritty, go and follow us on Twitter, X, whatever the cool kids call it, at Richie Brads36, at Donnie Druin. You saw a little bit of a tease, which we will talk about later, but that is not the outside linebacker who got traded this offseason that we are talking about. Richie, I was trying to enjoy my chicken tenders, as you can see on the screen. Buffalo.
Oh, very nice. I had chicken tendies.
There we go. These are supposed to be some kind of like special protein tenders. Trying to get the protein in, garlic parm sauce, enjoying my night, and then I get a little X notification that says trade. The Arizona Cardinals are trading Cameron Thomas to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 7th round pick. I cannot say verbatim what I said out loud, but it's a 3-letter acronym that is W2F, and I will let people figure out the rest from there.
Why the face?
Yep. Eden Rappaport reported earlier today that Thomas is now officially with the Kansas City Chiefs for the low price of a 7th round pick. Certainly a move nobody expected coming. Thomas had a handful of sacks the last couple of weeks in preseason play. Roster cuts are tomorrow. You would have figured if there was some real interest in trading a guy like Thomas, or if there was interest on the opposite end of the spectrum, that they would have made a move before that. But I mean, less than 24 hours away from having that 53-man roster finalized, they trade Thomas to the Chiefs for a 7th round pick. We could just start with your natural reactions, because mine was, what is going on?
Yeah, I was caught off guard. This was definitely not a player that I felt the Cardinals needed to move. This is also someone who has really looked good in the preseason, Donnie. And combined with Xavier Thomas, you felt like the Cardinals had something really good going on with a young duo off the edge. And it wasn't like you were looking at this. What am I trying to say? Sorry, getting off track a little bit. I'll try and get back to where I was originally trying to go. But this was a player that I don't think we felt needed to be traded, or a player that we wanted to be traded, and it ends up happening. And I'm with you. I'm kind of shocked that Thomas ends up getting moved on from, especially when you consider Bijay Ojulari is injured, and you need the depth, you need the pieces to be able to have any kind of sense of a pass rush this year. Not that the Cardinals have had very good pass rushes the last several years, so why are you getting rid of guys?
Yeah, that was my thing. It would be one thing if the Cardinals were just absolutely stacked on the edge. If Bijay Ojulari was healthy, I mean, even then, like you could make a really good opinion that Thomas may have been a border guy on the roster. But even then, like what we saw out of the preseason, especially weeks 2 and week 3, it really seemed like he had turned the corner. His confidence seemed to be at an all-time high moving into the second year under Nick Rallis's defensive system. And I just think, just wow. To say the Cardinals have depth at outside linebacker, like Ian Rappaport had mentioned in his tweet, definitely something. While you took your little hiatus, I was just telling them that Rapp's tweet about them having depth was LOL, laugh out loud.
I don't know what happened. It just threw me backstage.
You actually got traded for a 7th round pick. Congrats.
Sweet.
Yeah, you're gonna go win a Super Bowl with Kansas City, but
woo!
No, if there was just loaded talent and guys left to right on this roster, sure. And the Cardinals last year, they kept 7 outside linebackers. I don't think Cam Thomas was anywhere close to being a fringe borderline guy. But the low price of a 7th round pick really makes me wonder if they were going to cut him anyway.
And I think that's probably the most noteworthy portion of the conversation here, Donnie, is if they're moving Cam Thomas for a 7th round pick, there's a very good chance he wasn't making the roster anyways, which is weird to us as people who are outside of the building.
Wild.
Who are curious why someone who has been playing well during the preseason would not be able to stay on the roster, kind of thing. But it's something that is just going to puzzle us. And I don't know that we're going to get a clear, concrete answer as to why, but you
Could.
can. What's that?
We could.
We
We
could.
could. We'll get at to in a little bit, but
Yeah.
when you think of like defensive standouts for the Cardinals this preseason, you think of Darren Hall, you think of Xavier Thomas, and then you think of Cam Thomas, right? Like I mentioned a little bit earlier in the stream, Cam Thomas had a handful of sacks and even a handful more of pressures on top of those sacks. And when you're a team that had 33 team sacks last year, you really didn't address the edge room at all. Through the offseason, at least whenever it came to like prominent names. And then you head into the preseason very, very thin and top heavy, if you can even call it that. Your top guy in BJ Ojulari goes down. You're stuck with Zayvon Collins, Dennis Gardeck, and then a few other guys. And then you go and trade one of your hottest pass rushers. I think either A, they have an insane amount of faith in Xavier Thomas. And I like Xavier Thomas seemingly almost more than anybody. We'll see if he could do what he did in the preseason play against top tier competition week in and week out. We'll see if Zayvon and Dennis Gardeck can do that too. I think it's fair to say that everybody in that room that's healthy right now has question marks around them. To answer Jersey Cardinals question, do y'all watch Cam? He's better than BJ. I wouldn't go that far. I think Cam was coming on very, very strong in year 2 under Rallis. I think he had really found his footing as a pro, and he was able to think and play a little bit faster just because he was so used to what was being asked of him. For my money, Ojulari definitely had the highest ceiling of any pass rusher on the Cardinals, but that's why I'm not a football coach and I'm a white dude on the podcast wearing a backwards hat.
It's also really puzzling when you consider that Darius Robinson is injured too, and he's going to be out the 4 to 6 weeks. Sounds like the best case scenario for him. Like,
yeah,
this is a room that I disagree with Rapt, like you said, saying that this is a deep room for the Cardinals. Like, there's a lot of question marks in this room, and there's a lot of drop off at certain positions for this defensive line. And moving on from Cam Thomas without BJ Ojulari, without Darius Robinson, I just don't agree with it. And I mean, it's not like we're sitting here expecting that the compensation was going to be a 3rd round pick, but even the 7th round pick for someone that seemed to really be finally coming into his own with his team feels like a throwaway to me.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, that 7th round price tag just really makes me think they were trying to get rid of him.
Yep.
And someone had mentioned like maybe there's something going on behind the scenes we don't know about. I've talked to Cam a handful of times. He seems like he wouldn't hurt to fly. Like, he truly does not seem like he has a bad bone in his body. So I am just not sure. Other than they just wanted to cut him, they found a suitor to give him a late round flyer instead of letting him hit waivers. But we'll see. Really quick off of the Cam Thomas. Shout out So Turtles.
What's up,
Being
So
a Packers fan,
Turtles?
getting Trey McBride in fantasy. We are big Trey McBride people on here. McBridesmaids, as the PHNX fellows would call themselves. Kelly Kid, we're going to talk about this here in a few minutes. This doesn't help, or does it? Or does it? Get the tinfoil hats ready. And then Jersey Cardinal. I agree, man. I am bigger on Cam Thomas and a handful of people. I like them better than Myjai Sanders whenever they were both drafted. A baller indeed, which is why it's kind of so puzzling to see why they traded him. By no means was he like a undisputed starter, but when you look at the other depth pieces around him and next to him in the Cardinals locker room, he was definitely up there. Like, he would have had some serious playing time. And like I mentioned earlier, the Cardinals kept 7 outside linebackers this last year. I don't know if they're planning on doing it this year, but it's very hard to sell me on Cam Thomas was not making this roster. It is so hard to sell me on that. Touching on that, moving on. This is currently the depth right here. Shout out to Zach. The depth right here, courtesy of our lads, that little screenshot. Got Gardeck and Collins on the outside, Dimu KG and Xavier Thomas kind of behind them, and then Tyreek Smith and Jesse Luketa. I'll hear arguments for Xavier Thomas. Those other 3 guys on the outside, I would put Cam Thomas over them right now on the field.
I would agree. It's not a room that instills confidence. And this is also like we tried the Zaven Collins experiment with him at edge rusher last year. Didn't really work out. I know that he's someone that the team likes the versatility to be able to put all over the place. And when you have brought in Mac Wilson and some of the other bodies that they brought in the last couple of years to help bolster the inside linebacker room, you still have him there as an option. But now it feels like he's going to be forced to play there again this year. And I just don't know that I like that, Donnie. And I'm not saying that Cam Thomas starts over him, but it makes it so that you don't feel like you're forcing yourself to put Zaven Collins back on the edge after it didn't really work out last year. So I'm just not crazy about the way that this defense is being structured right now.
I would agree. I did like the extension they gave Collins. They basically split his 5th-year option up into 2 different years, $7 million annual average, I think, over that extension. What they're doing, though, is that they're banking on Zaven Collins on the player that he'll be. I just don't know at this point in time if he has really shown substantial growth as a pass rusher. Phenomenal guy in run support. Great guy to stop the run. He just doesn't have the bag, the arsenal, whatever you want to call it, as a pass rusher to consistently get home. Like, you needed a guy like BJ Ojulari opposite of him to really help him own in on maybe a couple one-on-one matchups that are a little bit more favorable. One thing a lot of people don't talk about is the defensive line got retooled this offseason. You were hoping guys like Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, Roy Lopez back for another year. Darius Robinson, hopefully he won't be out too long, but even to begin the season, that interior push could help those outside guys a little bit as well. Hopefully an improved cornerback room could have helped the edge group too. There's so many different intricacies to how this all works. But when you're just talking about the guys on this roster, Collins, wait and see mode. Dennis Gardeck, love the guy. We kind of know what he is at this point in his career. He's good for a few sacks. I mean, he led the team last year. But like you just know, unless he has this crazy surge in 2024, he's not going to be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Not that Arizona needs him to be, but you want to see him kind of take that next step as a starter. Dimukeji is what he is. Xavier Thomas, I'm pretty excited to watch him. I really, really hope he gets the opportunity to shine like a lot of people do. And then the rest of the room is kind of whatever it is. Going through the chat, I think I already brought this up earlier. Cardinals do need pass rush help. James out west, shout out to you, baby. Are they making room for a trade? Bring back Hassan Reddick. JC Cardinal sending a baller to a Super Bowl team is crazy. Yep. Is crazy. And then shout out to Houston. I'm sure they were going to release him anyways. Might as well get the 7th out of it. If they were going to release him, sure. Totally fair. I think we're making the argument right now. Did they need to? Should they have? Some people have kind of hinted at this in the chat, and I think the only way this move really connects the dots, truly, is by getting him. Richie, the Cardinals have north of $30 million in cap space. They have ample draft ammo, ample draft picks to make a phone call to the New York Football Jets and say, hey, homeboy isn't working out. Bring him back to Arizona, a homecoming, play under his former defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, who maximized him as a pass rusher, thrown to money. What was he, 28, right?
He's almost 30. So I think he's 29, turning 30.
For the record, that's not old. As somebody just turned 29. Either get a guy like Reddick, maybe Yannick Ngakoue, who's been on the free agent wire for a minute. There's a lot of concerns about his injury history, but
he'll be 30 on September 22nd.
Perfect. I'm going to try to talk myself out of paying Hassan Reddick now, but a guy like Yannick Ngakoue, 1-year deal coming into the free agency. We'll see, man. We'll see. But I guess my overall thought is this really only makes sense if there's another move coming. Monty has been known to cook during the draft, during free agency. We've seen him will and deal last year to go get a player at a position of need. You'll hear people talk about maybe them going to get a backup quarterback from the Cleveland Browns, maybe some other help elsewhere. We're not talking about Cam Thomas like he's a future Hall of Famer, because he's not. We're not talking about him like he's a Pro Bowl player, but he was a guy who had clearly showed some steps from year 2 to year 3. He looked good in preseason. Now, granted, there's a lot of people that will say anybody can look good in preseason, but you can only judge the players against what they're doing. No. Thoughts on bringing Reddick here and Ngakwe or anybody else?
I've been the wet blanket before and said that I don't think it makes sense for the Cardinals to make a trade for Hassan Reddick. I still stand in that corner. Now, I can tell you that it's still a really good player, and an edge rusher in their 30s still isn't that old. It's out of their prime, but it's not like a running back where it's like old as dirt kind of situation. So I could understand if you wanted to make the move to go after Hassan Reddick here, especially if you think that you're a team that's closer to competing. But I still don't think that this is the direction the Cardinals should be trying to go right now. I think that you're a young team that has the money for the future, has the draft capital built for the future. I don't like adding an older player. Like, he's going to be in his 30s. This is a team that should have their window open for a lot longer by having that youth movement. And I just don't think that Hassan Reddick fits that style of building that it feels like they're leaning towards right now. But I can turn heel real quick and tell you that it would be a really good move and investment to get a quality pass rusher in the building. You're not only going to have to move assets to get him, you have to pay him. And I don't know if I'm interested in paying Hassan Reddick.
I think that is very completely fair. Before we move on, shout to Damon. Damon won our giveaway last year to, I think, the Falcons game, whenever we gave away tickets for that. Shout out to you, my man. I hope you had a great time. We've had a lot of new subs within the last few months. We try to do giveaways somewhat often around here. So definitely be on the lookout for that. So shout out to you, Damon. Thanks for checking us out, bro. Jersey Cardinal also chimes in and agrees with you, Richie. I don't like adding an older player if we're not thinking Super Bowl.
Yep.
And I want to build off that because rebuilds appear to like not take as long as they once did. I mean, look at the Houston Texans, for example. Worst to first last year. Now, granted, they had a lot of dominoes fall their way. They are not playing in a very, very tough NFC West division with Rams, the Seahawks, the 49ers in it. But nonetheless, I mean, they managed to transform that franchise almost seemingly overnight. We have both been very vocal and on the record that what Monty Austin is doing as a general manager is the right way to go about it. You should absolutely not rush your way into trying to compete. But at what point do you say, hey, you know what? 2023 was kind of our throwaway year. We just wanted to see what we had. We're starting to build. At what point do you say we can make the playoffs? And if you think we can make the playoffs by adding X, Y, or Z player, why don't you go do it? You have plenty of ammo. You have plenty of assets to go do it. I think year 2, we both agree the team needs to show progress, right? Like 4-13 is not going to cut it. But then you get into the conversation of what's acceptable, how many wins is acceptable. Like we're putting labels on these kinds of things. If they went and got Reddick, how long do you think he would play here? Because you would have to extend him.
Right? He's not going to play unless he gets extended. I think that's the bottom line here.
Carlton, why would he want to come back here?
Money.
So, money and the chance to play under former defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon, who really squeezed a lot of juice out of that orange. I thought he did very, very well with him in Philadelphia. There's an obvious need for a guy like that, but also the other side of the coin, where does that pass rush go from there, right? Because you trade for a guy like Reddick, he's obviously going to be the starter. You're going to have B.J. Ojulari hopefully healthy at some point, starting with him. Are you going to pay Zaven Collins $7 million a year to be a third rotational guy? I don't think so.
No.
So, as Josh times in, money's good. Money's a good thing to have, I hear. And then we're always 3 superstars away from making anything. See, here's the Steve Keim thought process right here. Because Steve Keim would wheel and deal for the big names. This isn't attacking Jersey Cardinal, but Steve Keim would say, hey, you know what? We need X, Y, and Z. And he would throw stuff at the wall. Sometimes it would stick. I thought DeAndre Hopkins trade was a good trade. You look at some of the other guys he tried to acquire, though, more or less. All right, man. Let's wrap this up. The good people here need to go to bed, and so do we. We have a busy day with NFL cut down day tomorrow. Any closing thoughts?
I just was kind of taken off guard by it. So hopefully there's something to the plan that we just don't know yet, because right now I'm just not big on the decision to move him.
Nope. I think I would completely agree with you. Before we go, I'm actually a Chiefs fan. How good is Cam Thomas in your gentleman's opinion? Cam Thomas was showing improvement. I think a lot of people around here would say that he did not live up to his potential before he was traded. But I think the reason why this move is a little puzzling is he had shown he was capable to get after the passer in preseason. I know you can debate, hey, it's backups, but he can only control what he controls. He can't control if he plays against the first or the second team. What we know at this point in time for Cameron Thomas as a football player in 2024 is he was able to get after the passer in preseason. We'll see if that translates to the regular season. But honestly, man, like if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, throwing a 7th round flyer at Cam Thomas is a pretty good deal.
Yep, especially for a team that's coached under Steve Spagnuolo that's able to just get pass rushing production out of pretty much anybody. And they've already got a really good room there with George Karlaftis, the Felix, and Yudiki Uzama, I believe. I'm pretty sure I botched that name. Like, there's depth that you guys have there that will allow Thomas to be a not even a building block, but just another foundational piece to make sure that pass rushing room stays stocked. So you didn't trade for like an all-pro or anything like that,
No.
but you are adding to a room that is already pretty good. So if you're a Chiefs fan, you should feel pretty good that you're adding depth for very cheap amount of value.
Shout out to you, my man. Really appreciate you coming
Appreciate you,
through.
Doug.
Jersey Cardinals says, what time y'all come on tomorrow? We do not live stream every day. We are not as great as the guys over at PHNX, but we probably do this once a week. It'll definitely be more rampant whenever the season comes. We do excellent work at si.com/NFL/Cardinals if you are into reading and all those good stuff. But I mean, football season's here. Like, we're going to really hammer home the content. I'm really excited. And if you're an Arizona State Sun Devils fan, check out my dude at Locked On Sun Devils.
So. Season's here, boys. Season's here.
All right, man, let's get out of here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another edition of the Cardinals on SI podcast. For Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie Druin, and we'll see you guys